Good evening. Today is Thursday, June 24th, 2021. I now call this Fairfield City School District Regular Board of Education meeting to order. Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Begley?
Here.
Mr. Birding?
Present.
Mr. Clark?
Present.
Mrs. Gundrum?
Here.
Mrs. Shorter?
Okay, would y'all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on our agenda this evening is presentations and resolutions. I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Birding. Members of the board, we do have one short presentation this evening regarding the American Rescue Plan. You do have a handout in your folder this evening titled American Rescue Plan, Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plans. In a few minutes, I will turn it over to Mrs. Hogg, but before I do, I'd like to just make a few clarifications about the American Rescue Plan. If you look at the first two paragraphs on your handout, the second sentence in paragraph 1, talks about recent federal guidance, clarifies expectations for states and districts, including the development of a state plan that must be approved by the U.S. Department of Education before the remaining 1/3 of the federal funds can be allocated. In the second paragraph, it talks about the federal template also includes a requirement that districts and community schools receiving American Rescue Plan funds must publish local safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plans by June 24th, 2021, which is today. Each district and community school should post the plan on its local website and then submit the website address that links directly to the plan to an email address by June 24th. So the clarification, two clarifications that I would like to make this evening before turning it over to Mrs. Hogg is one, I think there was a misunderstanding by a lot of folks that posting this information, as that was posted, there was a misconception that school districts were agreeing to some kind of plan in order to get ESSER funding. In reality, the requirement is that school districts post their own plans. So it is a requirement for us to post our own plans and not a requirement to post a plan. The American Rescue Plan is not a plan for individual school districts, but it's more of an accountability thing for school districts across the state. Tell us what your plans are to return to school. And so there was some confusion about that. The second clarification I'd like to make, if you turn to the second page of your document, required elements of local plans. Number 1, you can see each plan must include, there are several things listed. The item 1 is universal and correct wearing of masks. So that just has to be addressed or discussed in the plan. Again, people saw that list and there were some assumptions made that that meant that Fairfield City Schools were requiring students and staff members to wear facial coverings in the fall, when in reality, our stance has not changed. We will continue to follow the guidelines and recommendations of ODH and ODE. At this time, ODH is recommending that those who haven't been vaccinated, they're asking them to consider wearing a mask. So that's where we are at this time. Nothing has changed since the last time in terms of the district stance on facial coverings for the upcoming school year. The only thing that could change that is if we get information from our local health department or ODE or ODH saying, hey, schools, this is what schools need to do for the upcoming school year, and that is a change. I'm not saying that that will happen, but it certainly could happen, and we'll respond appropriately at that time. So again, I just wanted to kind of clarify those two items for the board members and also community members. And we've since made those clarifications on our social media sites as well. Are there any particular questions about those two items?
No, I think that's a great point, and that it's okay for there to be some accountability as they
Yes.
hand us money.
Absolutely.
That's certainly understandable and I think appropriate. But let's not confuse that with them dictating
Correct.
the plan and what we have to do in order to have that money.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, great. Well, at this time, I will turn it over to Mrs. Aug, who may also refer to this document and also refer to the website that you can see on the monitor as well.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll be very brief here. We just wanted to share the web page with you tonight. So the American Rescue Plan provides a third round of funding to states, and a significant portion of that funding is being dispersed to school districts. So like Mr. Smith mentioned, this has been referred to as ESSER 3 funding, so you may have heard that term versus ARP. So as part of this disbursement, we are required to put together a web page that contains our Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services plan. And that plan had to be, or the web page address had to be submitted to ODE today. And so that has been done on our behalf, and so we are all set there. To guide us in this work, if you turn to page 2, under those required elements, we went through as a district team to make sure that all of those components were met, and those are in the links here on our webpage. Another part of this was that we did have to seek feedback from the public on the plan, which we did via a Google form, also on the webpage there, and we sought feedback from last Friday through tonight at 5 o'clock. So we were very lucky because we had already done the work around these plan requirements, and ODE actually encouraged us to use those existing plans when pulling the information together for the web page. So you can see also on page 2 under practical advice that they encouraged us to use what we had already done. So probably the best example of that that I can give you is in that third bullet point, the continuity of services plan, meeting students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health. You might remember that Mr. Crapo and I presented our ODE Learning Recovery and Extended Learning Plan to the board on March 17th. That was something that Governor DeWine had asked schools to do prior to April 1st. So we were able to include that here because it contained our plan to close the learning gap and also meet the social and emotional needs of our students. So like I said, we've already submitted this to ODE. We can continue to update the plan, and we'll continue to do so, which is a requirement from the federal government as well. And we have to do that throughout the duration of the American Rescue Plan, and that grant runs until September 30th of 2023. So we're supposed to seek feedback about every 6 months, and we will continue to do that to meet that requirement. So any questions for us?
Great. Any questions from the board? I think you did a great job of explaining it. We're not implementing anything new, it's just what we've had before. We just had to let them know what we're doing. That's great. Anything else, Mr. Smith, on that?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Great.